Hey all, this is Reddit Tosker. Helldivers 2 just released a new patch. I am not really a patch channel, and I don't expect that to change. I'm not going to cover every patch for every game that I'm interested in. But this one is substantial, so we're going to go over it and talk about what I think about it. The patch notes read, today's patch is dealing with the spawn rate of heavily armored Terminid enemies, as well as the possible play against them. It also contains some fixes to UI elements and crash fixes. The amount of heavily armored targets that spawn on higher difficulties, especially for Terminids, have been a big discussion point online and internally. The intent is for groups to have to bring some form of anti-tank capability, but not to the degree previously needed. To that end, we have reduced the spawn rate of Chargers and Bile Titans on difficulties 7 and up. In addition, we have reduced the risk of spawn spikes of Chargers and Bile Titans. Please note that we have changed the distribution of enemy types, not reduced difficulty. Expect other enemy types to appear in greater numbers instead. We are humbled by the community's ability to find things like the Charger's leg meta in our game. However, spending your anti-tank weapons on legs instead of the obvious weak point seems counter to expectation. We are not changing anything regarding the Charger's legs. We are, however, lowering the health of the Charger's head. It should now be at a point where a well-placed shot from a recoilless rifle or an expendable anti-tank instantly kills a Charger. Together with the undocumented change of last patch that increased the armor penetration of less well-placed shots for EATs and recoilless rifle shots, Chargers should now be easier to handle by well-equipped groups. Now, I really agree with this change. I am in favor of Helldivers remaining extremely difficult, and I was in favor of the nerfs to the railgun and the shield backpack. But one of the reasons why the railgun was so popular before the nerf was because on the higher difficulties they spawned so many Chargers and Bile Titans, and the railgun was one of very few things that could efficiently deal with them from the front. And it was very important to deal with them from the front, because behind the Charger was 6 other Chargers, and 2 Bile Titans, and 53 normal bugs. On difficulty 9, it wasn't feasible to circle around the Charger. There's too much behind the Charger for that to be an effective strategy. So I agree with the changes, and I'm especially happy with the buff to the recoilless rifle and the expendable anti-tank. The recoilless especially might get more use now, and more importantly, its ability to be reloaded by a friend might also get more use. I really like the ability of certain weapons to have a person dedicated to reloading, which increases the effectiveness of that weapon. The recoilless is one of those weapons that benefits the most out of it, and now potentially there's a real reason for people to do it, since you can now one-shot the Charger by shooting it in the head. I am in favor of anything that increases the incentive for people to cooperate in reloading these weapons. It's an incredibly cool mechanic that I wish people made more use of, but I understand why they don't because its utility is limited. One of the suggestions I've made before is that this cooperative reload shouldn't be limited to just the person holding the weapon and a different person holding the backpack. If the person that brings the stratagem takes the backpack and the weapon at the same time, then any other player should be able to do the co-op reload by taking the shells out of your own backpack and putting them into the weapon you're holding. One of the reasons the cooperative reload doesn't get used as much as I think it ought to is because you're asking the other player too much. You're asking them to give up their own backpack slot, and you're asking them to stick next to you throughout the entire mission so that your effectiveness is not reduced. And that's often a hard ask when you're playing with random players. But if anyone can reload your weapon if your backpack is on your back, then all you need to do is ask a nearby person for a bit of their time, and that would increase the instances of people cooperatively reloading, which I think should be a goal. Because again, I really think it's a very cool mechanic, and I am distressed that I don't see it as often as I would like. Alright, next in the patch notes they talk about electronic countermeasures, the Operation Modifier, which had a chance of giving you a random stratagem instead of one you input. It has been removed in order to be reworked and will be reintroduced in a future iteration. We found this modifier wasn't communicated clearly enough and overall caused more frustration than excitement with the way it was currently implemented. They made this change last patch, but they forgot to put it in the patch notes. Again, I think this is good. That one was the worst stratagem in my opinion, and I would actively avoid operations that had that modifier on them. They also talk about a bunch of known bugs, which I will not mention except for one, because it's about the mech. The exosuit can destroy itself with rockets if it fires while turning. So I'm glad that they know about that and that they're working to fix it. Alright, last thing, this image of flying bugs have been making the rounds, and these flying bugs can be seen on the cover art for Helldivers 2. The CEO of Arrowhead had this to say on the subject. I've heard rumors of flying bugs in Helldivers 2. I want to officially refute such preposterous claims. Everybody knows that bugs can't fly. And I'm not alone in thinking this. The Ministry of Truth agrees that this is propaganda from bug sympathizers that want to brainwash good people. So you heard it here, straight from the horse's mouth. There are no flying bugs, and personally, I find the idea of flying bugs offensive. If anyone you know claims to see flying bugs, be sure to contact your nearest democracy officer, and they'll investigate the matter for possible treason. Anyway, that's the end of this video. As always, thank you very much for watching.